The views expressed on the following program do not necessarily represent those of this station or its management. It's time for Where You Live with Gene and Tony, the show that's all about owning, buying, selling, renting, and association management. If it involves a home, we'll talk about it. Here's your chance to get your homeowner questions answered. From the Natural Lawn and Landscape Studios, here's Gene and Tony.
Needed the shelter of someone's arms, and there you were. Needed someone to understand my ups and downs.
Good morning. Welcome to Where You Live with Gene and Tony. I'm Gene Sullivan.
I'm Tony Crockett. How are you, Gene?
I'm doing good. You know, when the sun is out and bright, it makes everything okay.
It does. It sure improves my outlook. I know that.
Yes, it does. I had my hair cut this week, and my barber said, Gene, you are the pastiest that I've seen you in a year. And I said, thank you for the compliment.
Yeah, right. Thanks for noticing.
Thanks for nothing. Yeah. Well, folks, we want to thank you for joining and stopping and giving us some time here in Where You Live with Gene and Tony. We are broadcasting from the Natural Green Lawn and Landscape Studios, and we want you to remember Natural Green is a locally owned and operated lawn and landscape care company. Their mission is to use the most environmentally sensitive products available to keep your lawn and landscape looking lush and beautiful while still healthy for both people and pets. Give them a call, see what they can do for you today. Their number is 763-213-2410. We're also brought to you by Extreme Exteriors and American Family Insurance, the Kim Bennett Agency. We've got a number of great stories we're going to be talking about. One of the first ones is going to be a landlord who seems to have a unique way of dealing with delinquent paying.
He has a unique way of collecting rent.
Rent.
I would call that.
Yes,
yeah.
And we'll talk to you about what that is in just a moment. And then a great editorial article from a gentleman out of Colorado Springs. He asks the question, have we lost our capacity for self-government? And he's saying, yes, we have.
It's a great essay. I really enjoyed it.
And he says the answer is step up. Well, we're going to talk about that and so much more. So without further ado, let's begin with property management in the news. Property management in the news is brought to you by Home Furniture and Abbey Floor Coverings. Their showrooms are staffed with professionals who will help you choose what you need to fit both your lifestyle and budget. Whatever you need, chances are they'll have what you're looking for. Now, if you wish to avail yourself of special pricing and discounts you won't find anywhere else, all Where You Live listeners can call Customer Service Coordinator Lori Matson at 952-224-2663. That number again, 952-224-2663. And ask for your Where You Live with Gene and Tony special pricing. Well, our first story comes from the Dayton Daily News back in February. I don't know how we missed this, about a month or so ago. An interesting story. There is a gentleman who is a landlord, and he also has a distinction of being a former Citizen of the Year. He is a past president of the Waynesville, Ohio Area Chamber of Commerce. He's a man who owns a grocery store in Waynesville and was voted in 2006 as the Citizen of the Year. A very upstanding sort of gentleman, wouldn't you agree?
Did you mention he's also a landlord? Did you say that,
yes,
please? Okay, yeah.
And he's a landlord, but he seems to have a very interesting way of dealing with delinquent paying tenants. Tony, why don't you tell us about that?
Well, he is accused of striking one of his renters 4 times on the buttocks with a belt. Pictures taken by the police show little marks on the buttocks.
So we're talking, he's spanking a tenant.
That was the headline. Former Citizen of the Year accused of spanking man. Apparently they got in a dispute over the fact that the victim owed over $2,000 in past due rent. And Mr. Cronenberger, who is the Citizen of the Year we're talking about, said, if you're going to act like a child, I'm going to treat you like one. And then he assaulted this guy.
Man, I can't. I can't believe
it's
that.
a technique I've never heard applied in landlord-tenant relationships. I want to ask this question. How did they end up in a situation where Cronenberg could take his belt and spank this guy?
Well, apparently, it says a little bit later in the story, we do know from the police report that it looks like that the assault took place in Mr. Cronenberg's office at the Hometown Marketplace, which is the supermarket that he owns in Waynesville. Okay. So I don't know how large Waynesville is. I'm imagining it's a smaller town. Major
maybe a suburb of Dayton. I don't know.
Sort of a supermarket, and he probably has asked a lot of people to deal with business there since he offices
but
there.
how do you grab an adult guy and spank him with your belt?
I know
that's my question.
That's the part to me that seems a little bit I don't understand either, because the gentleman who was delinquent in his dues, or not dues, but in his rent, was a 29-year-old male.
Okay. And he did tell the police that he was scared and just wanted to get it over with. Now, that kind of inkles that he acceded to this treatment, or he
would have to assent to it.
It in order to get it over with.
I mean, yes, you don't.
They're not specific about that in the article.
If not, then you have more than him just accosting this young man. You have him kidnapping, taking him against his will, tying him up and then doing the deed if that's what happened. But yes, it sounds like he agreed to it, and I don't know what in his right mind. What 29-year-old male would say, okay, I'll let you spank me. I'll let you whip me with your belt.
Okay, how about this scenario? Let's say Mr. Cronenberger offered him a discount on his rent if he allowed him to spank him. Of course, then we're talking about something entirely different, aren't we?
Yeah. But what a deal.
It's crazy. I couldn't help but think of being a parent. And Mr. Cronenberg did say this tenant was acting like a child. And spanking, of course, that brings up parental issues in my mind. But also, as a woman, when you're managing people, it's a lot like managing your family and managing your children. And I don't think, at least I can't as a woman, avoid likening it to being a parent, even in the best ways.
Okay.
Because I'm managing people.
I understand that thought. However, there's not many people that would actually have come to their mind that, I'm going to just give you a good spanking.
No, I probably would have thought of a timeout first.
Yeah. Apparently, Mr. Kronberger never heard of the rule of thumb. You know what the rule of thumb was talked about back in the 1800s when we were talking about public school. Then it wasn't uncommon for a misbehaving child in school to get a swat with a switch. Okay. But that's where this idea of the rule of thumb. In other words, the teacher was not allowed to get anything thicker than the width of their thumb as a rod to spank the child.
Okay. All right. That's where that phrase came from.
That's where it came from.
So what I see here, too, is Mr. Cronenberg obviously allowed this situation to push him to a point past common sense and past reasonable reaction. If he had a process and policies about rent collection, if he had consequences that he did apply for non-payment, I don't think he would have ended up in this situation. Do you?
Exactly. But I've got something else for you, too. Chris, I've got a special tape. Do you want to play that for Tony?
Good evening, I'm Liza Danver. For the second time, a Waynesville supermarket owner has been accused of spanking a grown man. The new lawsuit claims Ron Cronenberger spanked a mentally challenged man. Shelby Costo talked to the victim's family in Waynesville in tonight's big story.
The victim's sister tells me her handicapped brother was beaten at least
Chris.
3
Thanks
times with a paddle.
Okay, so now we have a little more information. This is not the only time Mr. Cronenberger has used this method.
No, now I've got some. Well, I've got issues all the way around. There's nothing. There's nothing for a grown man that would lend himself to do
except
something
now
like
it sounds like it is his process and his policy. It's part of his collection practice.
So he does it to a renter, and then secondly, he does it to an employee who works at the grocery store. And this person ended up being a mentally challenged individual.
Yeah.
And you know what?
I would venture to say Mr. Cronenberg has his own mental health issues.
I can't read much in the future, but this much I will read. It says here at the end of the article, it says, Cronenberger remains free after missing his original arraignment. And I believe that after this second offense, probably not so much.
Probably not so free
not
anymore.
So free, yeah.
I just want to encourage landlords to have a policy and to stick to it, because even if you don't resort to the extremes of spanking a tenant, there are plenty of landlords out there that get so frustrated that they're at their wits' end and they are unreasonable with people or they are rude to people. And the truth of the matter is, like parenting, if you just have a process and you stick to it, and if you say there's consequences, you stick to the consequences, you are going to be able to operate your business.
You mean what you say, and you say what you mean.
There you go.
I mean, that's, I think, what you've been saying here, and that is and we've talked about this before, when there's a small child and you say, Johnny, I want you to stop, and I'm going to count to 10. And when does Johnny stop? At 10. And he's no dummy. He's going to stop at the point where you mean business.
Sure.
And if you do that with the rent, with consequences, with eviction, much better way
that's
than...
Right. If you don't mean business until you've lost control, that's not a good scenario.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, hey, we're going to take a break right now. Don't go away. A lot more of Where You Live with Gene and Tony after these messages.